Welcome to episode 26 of Duties of the Heart. And in this episode, we're going to go through chapter 5 of The Gate of Serving God. And in this episode, a very interesting episode, we're going to deal with the forms of stimulus provided by the intellect, or to put it in a different way, provided by God. The instructions to a servant who has proved himself from an ethical point of view and various other ways to have refined his character to such a high degree that now his responsibilities in life change, and God has deemed him worthy of becoming a servant of God. In other words, he has a mission in life, and as a member of God's elite, now the rules change of his life, of their life or her life, and he has to assume new responsibilities for himself, for his own physical well-being. You now become a sanctuary for God. God will rest within you if you manage to refine yourself to such a high degree. And if God is dwelling within you, you have to look after yourself, because you are basically housing a portion of Hashem, and you must take care of it and keep yourself holy. So, chapter 5, Rabbi Bachya begins. It is now fitting that we explain the forms of stimulus provided by the intellect. Until the end of this gate, we will use a question and answer format, as this is most suitable to a clear exposition of the topic we are investigating. The intellectual stimulus is God's reminder to man, through his intellect, to know him and to recognize his signs of his wisdom. It comes from God to one who has made the Torah the light of his path. When he attains to the limit of his intellectual ability and the utmost clarity of his perception, when he yearns to gain the favour of the Almighty and to ascend the heights of the pious, and turns his heart away from the worries and distractions of this world. These are the means by which a man can realise the aim of the intellectual stimulus. He should have a clear grasp of what the Creator has implanted in the human mind, namely, adoration of the truth and contempt for falsehoods, preference for righteousness and avoidance of injustice, repaying the good with goodness and praising them, whilst repaying the wicked with wickedness and condemning them, being on peaceful terms with people and acting kindly towards them, returning praise for favours, reward for kindnesses, and punishment for wickedness, weighing the superiority of one reward over another and the severity of one punishment compared to another, and forgiving offenders when they truly repent. So we are generally told to act like a God, or be like a mirror of God, of the attributes that we attribute to God, of forgiveness and compassion. We have to master all of these attributes in ourselves before we can be considered servants of God. And Rabbi Bachya continues, when these concepts are clearly established in a man's soul by way of his intellect and power of perception, his intellect will have become sound and his perception strong. And if God prompts him in regard to the right way for him, he will arouse his mind and soul to appreciate his favours towards him, and he will intensify his recognition of these favours. When he tries to recount them and grasp them in his mind and cannot do it, because they are so all-encompassing and abounding, constant and continuous, he will demand of his soul what his mind recognizes as obligatory, repaying benefactors with good and choosing justice, and he will resolve to repay the Almighty, may he be exalted, for the abundant good he has showered upon him. And when he realizes that he hasn't the power to do so, and that the Creator does not need him, he will be bound to humble himself, and to be lowly and small in his own sight. Afterwards, he will solicit his mind concerning those actions which will enable him to draw near and come close to God, in order that they may serve as a substitute for the return that is due him. His mind will then guide him on the straight path in this regard. So now Rabbi Bachya is about to start this dialogue between the mind and the soul. The mind asking questions, the soul responding. So in this section, it's Rabbi Bachya begins. The mind asks the soul, is it clear to you and firmly understood that you are pledged to your Creator for his kindness and belong to him because of his abundant grace and great favour? The soul, yes. The mind, is it your intention to repay at least part of what you owe the Creator? The soul, yes. The mind, but how is this possible for you when your longing for him is weak? For only he who longs for health can bear the bitterness of the medicine, but he who does not long for health will not submit to the severity of the treatment. The soul, my desire is strong, and my concern is great to repay as much as I can of what I owe my God. Therefore, continue to encourage me. The mind, if you are telling the truth in what you are saying, the treatment may be successful in your case, but if the truth is not as you put it, you will succeed only in deceiving yourself. For when a patient lies to his physician, he only deceives himself, wastes the physician's efforts, and aggravates his illness. The soul, and how can it be determined whether my longing is strong or weak? The mind, if your longing for him comes after the clear realization of how great is the debt you owe him, how little is it in your power to repay it, and that your neglect of it brings your ruin, while your diligence in it secures your salvation and your life, then your longing is genuine and your desire ardent, but if not, it is false. The soul, so long as I was prompted by the history of former ages gone by, my desire was never other than weak, and my longing was a deception, until the truth of what you have spoken became clear to me intellectually. At first it became clear to me by way of the Torah's inspiration, and afterwards by way of rational demonstration. It was then that my longing became genuine and my desire pure. So the next section describes an amazing section about how the mind convinces or instructs the soul to renounce contemptible qualities and various methods of improvement. The servant now is ready to take on his mission. He's ready to take orders, so to speak, but there are certain things that have to be fixed in the person, physically and mentally, before the mission can begin. So, the mind. If what you have said is true, then bear with the pain of the treatment and endure the bitterness of the medicine and its unpleasantness, after first giving up the bad food to which you have grown accustomed. The soul. What is the bad food to which I have grown accustomed? The mind. It is the contemptible quality which has overpowered you from the start, and the forces that have strengthened it from the earliest years of your growth. The soul. Which quality is this, and what are the forces that strengthen it? The mind. You have many contemptible qualities, but their root and foundations are two. One of them is love of bodily pleasures, eating, drinking, sexual relations, and the other bodily needs. You have acquired this quality from your bad neighbour, namely your body. The second quality is the love of power and status, arrogance, haughtiness, and jealousy. This is what leads you to fall short in properly repaying your benefactor. You acquire this quality from your neighbours, amongst whom you have grown up, namely your brothers and relatives. The soul. And what are the forces that I need to keep far from me? The mind. The forces of the first quality are excesses in eating and drinking, dress, sleep, rest, leisure, and the like. The forces of the second quality are excessive talking and too much socializing with other people, trying to please them, loving praise and honor from them, jealousy of their worldly possessions, pressuring them in regard to their property, ridiculing them, harping on their thoughts, and so forth. If what you have said of your longing and great desire to make a repayment for the favours which God has bestowed upon you is true, then keep far from you, with all your strength, the forces and qualities that I have mentioned to you. Then I will promote you to another level of treatment, the soul. It will be difficult for me to renounce these vices, since I have grown used to them for so long. Therefore, be kind enough to show me how this might be made easier for me. The mind. Surely you know that a sensible individual finds it easier to agree to the amputation of a part of his body and the loss of one of his limbs if it is attacked by some disease which he fears will spread and affect his other limbs. When he understands the difference between the two alternative conditions and realizes the inequality of the two evils, so it is with you. If you want to make it easier for yourself to renounce that which is hard to relinquish, then take to heart and weigh in your mind the good you will attain from the renunciation, as opposed to the evil which will befall you if you continue with it. Renouncing contemptible qualities difficult to part with will then be easier for you. The soul. What is the good that I will attain from renunciation and the evil that will befall me if I continue with it? The mind. The good will be your tranquility and relief from the gloomy darkness of this world, the pleasures of which are mingled with sadness, its lusts brought to an end. This will bring you to recognize, with the full force of your recognition, the place of your repose, the life hereafter, to work for it and to be concerned about it. This is one class amongst the many classes of virtues on which your salvation and your life depend. The evil is recurring worry, compounded sorrow, and constant grieving at the non-fulfillment of your worldly desires, which, even if you were to attain them, would only bring you what is futile, fleeting, and transitory, for it will undoubtedly pass on to someone else. Nothing will remain with you of this world, nor will you secure the next world. What is more, despite your lengthy efforts, you will fail to attain your desires. The soul. I have understood what you have said, and I hope that, as a result, it will now be easier for me to renounce what had previously been difficult for me to part with. Continue now to lead me to the second part of the curative methods, which will teach me what I want to learn of the service of God. And then now Rabbi Bachya is going to give a model for relating to God in the same question and answer format. So he begins with the mind. The ruling principle and sum of the matter is that you assume towards he who is above you all those obligations which you would want to be assumed towards yourself by one beneath you, given the inequality of the relationship. Take what would please you or displease you in the conduct of one beneath you, and commit yourself to that same code of conduct towards the one above you. The soul. Carry on and explain. The mind. Think of God's graces towards you, those which you share with others, and those which you are specially favoured. Then imagine that you had bestowed similar favours upon your servant, whom you had acquired. The kind of conduct on his part towards you that would please you, except upon yourself towards your Creator, and what would seem to you to be improper conduct on his part, you too should regard as improper conduct on your part towards your Creator. The soul. I have understood in a general way what you have said to me. Do me a kindness now and explain it to me in detail. Rabbi Bachya is now going to continue with this question and answer format under the subject of how a servant should act towards his master. So he begins, the mind. The proper way for a servant in this world to act towards his master, who bestowed upon him even a small portion of the bounties your Creator has bestowed upon you, includes serving him exclusively, in word and in deed, faithfulness to him and dedication in his affairs, both outwardly and inwardly, and awe and fear of him, so long as he is in his service. As one of the pious has put it, do not rebel against your master while he is looking at you. Also, the servant should be lowly and humble before his master, in his external actions and in the privacy of his conscience. He should bear himself with humility before him, in his dress and in his mode of conduct. He should honour him, exalt him with his tongue and in his heart, praise and thank him by day and by night, recall his beneficence in private and in public, recount his glory and praise as befits him. Run to do his service with joy and good intentions, out of love for him, to find favour before him, to draw near to his will. He should always plead with his master to accept him and forgive him. He should love him, fear that he falls short in what is he commanded him. Heed his command, keep far from what he has forbidden him, and bear in mind his previous sins. His master's favours should appear manifold to him, and he should appreciate their magnitude. He should deprecate the value of his own deeds, in light of what he owes him, belittle his own efforts, compared with what he should have done, admit his own insignificance in relation to the greatness of his master, and bow to him frequently, bowing down to him in submission and humility. He should put his trust in him for all his needs, and accept any condition his master brings upon him. If his master provides for him fully, he should offer thanks and praise. If he leaves him hungry, he should accept his condition patiently. He should not suspect the fairness of his judgment, nor attribute to him injustice in his decree. He should be content with what the master favours him, and justify the master when he disciplines him. Furthermore, it is proper on his part that in every movement of his limbs and in all his qualities he manifests the signs of his service and his master's ownership over him. He should speak only of his master, pay exclusive attention to his master's ways, listen only to his master, eat only what he provides for him, think only of his greatness, rejoice only upon finding favour with him, be happy only in his service, seek only to do his will, hasten only at his bidding, desist only from rebelling against his master's will, stay nowhere except in his master's house, stand firm only in his faith, read only his book, wear only the cloak of his reverence, sleep only in a bed of love for him, imagine only his likeness, wake only with the sweetness of his memory, find pleasure only in his company, flee only from rebelling against him, grieve only when he is angered, fear only his reproof, wish only for his grace, be angry only with what his master's will obliges him to be so, be pleased only with one who does his master's will, take only with his permission, and give only to one whom the master has commanded to give. So it is with every motion that he makes. He should not move a leg or raise an eyelid except to fulfill the will of his master. On the other hand, the improper ways for a servant to act are the opposites of those that are good in his master's sight. When the ways of proper conduct are reversed, they are easily recognized. I have prepared and assembled here for you a sufficient number of examples to indicate to you the rest of the duties and their opposites, since the ways in which a servant in this world finds favour with his master are, as we have described, and you know how insignificant is the kindness of masters to their servants, how much then will you owe God? Much more than what we have mentioned, when you come to repay him for all his kindness towards you. And that concludes the 5th chapter. So a fascinating dialogue between the mind and the soul. The mind instructing the soul on its obligations and how to act, what to bear in mind. And basically he constructs a mindset for the servants to follow. The servants should be proud of the fact that that God has seen something inside him or her that he's given this chance. So he must take advantage of this. He must make sure to scrub off the moss of his previous life and fine-tune himself to an even higher degree. He's considered almost like a kohen or some sort of priest in God's eyes, and must keep himself holy. He can forget his previous life. God, and not worry about things and generally in life. God will make everything work out for the servant as long as the servant proves himself day to day with a piousness that is befitting a servant of God. And we're going to continue with chapter 6 next episode, in this gate of serving God.